everyone. Welcome. My name is Rosie, and I go by Rosie in the Rockies here on YouTube, on Instagram, and now on Etsy, which I'll talk about shortly. I hope you had a great stitching August and are leaning into your fall stitching, whether that's Sampler September or Halloween or something else. August was my month of connection with other stitchers, as well as a new stitching venture for me. I'll share who I felt the stitchy love from throughout the video while I talk about projects, and everyone and everything I mention will be linked in the description box below. My plan for this video is to share 3 FFOs, one of which is an antique reproduction that I've charted and released on Etsy, and now that has a stitch along thanks to Contented Needleworker Kim. And then I'll share 2 other prior whips that I actually fully finished, framed, in August. And then I'll share 2 more finishes from August and end with some brief plans for Sampler September, including sharing the next antique that I've just started reproducing. So you'll want to stay to the end and see that. I hope you have something nice to drink and some needlework or other craft in hand while you watch this stitching update. First things first, my finish and FFO from August, and now an Etsy release, Elizabeth Metcalf 1860. I first showed you Elizabeth last month. This is an antique my best friend and I purchased when she and my partner were purchasing multiple antiques for me with the intention of having me reproduce them just for me and my best friend. And then as I was working on them, she really encouraged me to consider releasing them. The sampler is really beautiful and unique. First I'll show you the original antique. So this is a photo of what the antique looks like. It's since been framed with professional backing, and it now hangs in my best friend's living room. And then here is a photo when I first attempted to stitch Elizabeth on a lighter fabric that looked closer to the color of the back of the piece that was cleaner than the front. The front is pretty dirty. And you can see in this photo that some of the cream and light pink stitches are pretty hard to see. So I scrapped that and switched out for a piece of 40 count straw by Weeks Dye Works. This is what it looked like at the end of July after 1 month of stitching on her. And here Elizabeth is now in all her glory, fully framed. I'll talk a little bit about her while you take a look at her. So she's stitched with classic Colorworks cottons, although I also provided a DMC conversion that is pretty close, but obviously DMCs are not variegated, and so there are slight differences in the stitching. What drew me to her initially are the unique elements that I haven't seen in many other samplers. So this pinwheel border all the way around, these leaves or flowers that look kind of like watermelon slices, and then these kind of fan flowers. Elizabeth stitched the vine to look kind of like a ribbon. She has these loops in the vine, and I thought those were really unique, and that's what initially made me and my friend fall in love with her. I've seen some of these motifs, particularly this kind of fan flower, in 1800s embroidery pieces from Europe, but I hadn't seen them in many cross-stitch samplers before, samplers that had a combination of cross-stitch and embroidery. And then what made me fall in love with her even more while charting and then stitching her is that she was very precise with her motif placement. She made the sampler very symmetrical. There were not mistakes in like the spacing on either side of the center motifs. She made one tiny mistake in the border here where she missed a half stitch, and I did leave that out because I think telling stitchers to stitch on a half stitch for some stitches and then not for the majority is asking for trouble. And the symmetry overall was perfect, but the colors were so bright and vibrant. So I've created a vision in my mind of who this girl was. I think she was probably perfectionistic, but maybe had kind of a wild or very active imagination. And when I say wild, I mean that in the best way possible. The frame is from Michael's Custom Framing. I'm not sure if you can tell here, but it has some bronzy color to it, which I think pulls out this classic Colorworks color brandied pears that's here. And now you can purchase Elizabeth in my new Etsy shop, which is linked below. She's 10% off for the month of September, for Sampler September. And included in the chart, I wrote up a little description and had a page with the original sampler that talks a little bit about the stitching process and who we consulted with. Can you see the original sampler? Maybe a little bit. Because I thought what I knew about her history was important. I released her on August 31st, and then to my surprise, I was not expecting anything from, putting this on Etsy. I thought, okay, maybe in the next several years, a couple of people might be interested in it, but people are so generous and kind and supportive. So I wanted to thank those who were enthused about her and suggest that you follow them if you're not already doing so, even if you're not interested in Elizabeth. So first, Rita, Stitch and Chat, who is also from Colorado, was my very first customer. Rita, you are so supportive. I really hope we get to meet and do a hiking and stitching day together someday. Tina, the Stitch Thief on Instagram, was my second customer, and Tina put up an Instagram story that brought a bit of traffic to my Etsy page. And then Kim, Contented Needleworker Kim, who is so kind, so enthusiastic. Kim posted about Elizabeth, and then the next thing I knew, within a handful of hours, she had pulled together a group of stitchers, including Sarah from Sarah's Stitchy Spot, April Heirloom, Susan Stanley, Krista Ray, Renee Larson, Kendra from I'm a Stitch Nerd, all of whom I'll link below. And then the next thing I knew, they're all planning a stitch along together. I was so overwhelmed with gratitude, but more than that, this tremendous and overwhelming feeling that I and all of us are part of something bigger in needlework and history. And I suppose that's true from the samplers I bought reproduced by others, but I think it feels very different when you are the person doing the reproduction, especially when this is your first reproduction. So I wanted to thank all of you, and I can't wait to watch your progress in the Stitch Along. If you are interested in joining the Stitch Along, please either message me below or contact me or Kim. Again, that's Contented Needleworker Kim, and I'll link her below on Instagram. and we'll add you to the group chat. The other thing, Susan, I hope you don't mind me sharing, Susan Stanley's maiden name is Metcalf with an E. So Susan thinks she may be related to Elizabeth. I wish that I was able to narrow people down in my ancestry genealogy search so that I could have said to Susan, it's this specific woman in the UK, but unfortunately I couldn't. I stopped after finding more than 20 Elizabeth Metcalfs. I think one of the problems is that she didn't write her age or sign her age on this sampler. We just know it was stitched in 1860 and we know her name. So when I did my search on Ancestry, I searched very broad, anyone who was 6 years old to, I think I stopped at 25 years old. And there were so many Elizabeths in each age range, but I'm going to turn my research spreadsheet over to Susan so that hopefully she can work backwards in her family tree and maybe narrow it down. So thank you to all of you, Kim and Susan and Sarah and Krista, April, Renee, Kendra, Tina. If I've missed you, I'm so sorry. Rita, thanks so much to all of you who already purchased the sampler. To those of you who have interest, she's 10% off, so $8.90 for the rest of September. And I also want to send a huge thanks to Angie from Angie Slowly Crafts here on Flosstube and on Instagram, because I don't use Pattern Keeper, so Angie was my Pattern Keeper tester, and she made sure that the pattern itself converted to Pattern Keeper. Now, because these are classic Colorworks flosses and I provide a secondary DMC conversion, you will need to put the flosses into Pattern Keeper on your own because Pattern Keeper does not identify classic Colorworks. There are only 11 of them. It shouldn't be too hard. And then I am going to show you the classic Colorworks flosses, but they are pretty ratty because I put them through the ringer, so I am sorry about that. Here they are, and I hope you can see that. I may need to change my lighting. Hold on one sec. Is that better? I don't know if that helps. That does create a shadow, but maybe you can see the flosses a bit better. They're very pretty, although mine are ratty. And if you stitch her on 40 count, one of each color should be enough. Once again, if you like the way Elizabeth looks and want to either join the SAL or just join our group chat on Instagram, let me know below or message me or Kim on Instagram. One of us will add you. And if you are not watching Content and Needlework or Kim on Flosstube, I cannot urge you enough to check her out. She is such a bright light. Her laughter and enthusiasm for the craft, her love of stitching, and her gorgeous craft room will make you feel like you're sitting with a good friend in the coziest place together. And I'm currently charting the next antique for reproduction, and I will show you that when I get to plans. Okay, the other two FFOs were older finishes from 2023 and 2024. In 2023, when I had been stitching for a couple of years already and then discovered Flosstube, I discovered Cross Stitch with Luda's channel. And one of the projects she was working on was Sampler Cove's Midnight in the Garden. Here's a photo of the cover page. I finished this piece in 2023. Here's a photo of it finished. You can see that I left the top alphabet off, which meant I had to adjust the border and then adjust the butterflies within the border. I can't remember why I left the alphabet off. I don't know. And then I finally framed it in August. Here are some photos and video clips of it framed. and it's now hanging in our downstairs office / den, which is my partner's office and my boys' homework room. And then the other FFO that I fully finished in August is Mojo Stitches in the library. Here is a photo of the cover page of the chart and then some photos of the finish. I first saw this on Lala D Stitches or Laura's Flosstube in late 2023 and thought it would be a perfect gift for the librarian a few towns over where our family would go for books and book recommendations. This librarian was a very special lady, and she was planning to retire in the summer of 2024. So I finished this for her in March of 2024, thinking I would give it to her in the summer, as her retirement approached. But then she very unexpectedly passed away. So after her passing, I asked her daughter if she wanted me to frame the piece and give it to her as a memorial piece. And she said that would be too difficult for her at that time, which is totally understandable. So I held on to it. And this summer, she was finally ready for it. So I framed it in a 12 by 12 white frame from Amazon. And when we were in Denver in August, we got to catch up and I gifted it to her, and it now hangs in her downstairs entryway. Also, Sabrina from Lady Marmalade and Stitches is currently working on this project. So those are my FFOs. My other stitching in August, aside from Elizabeth's reproduction here, was really focused on working toward finishes. Maybe we'll call it monogamous or semi-monogamous stitching. I think I mentioned in my last video that I was getting into a focus kind of mood, that I was thinking about stitching a bit more monogamously, and that's exactly what I did. I basically pulled out my oldest whip, stitched on it until it was done, then pulled out another whip and stitched on it until it was done. It was really enjoyable, but I'm not sure if I'll do it regularly. Maybe the next time I'm close to a couple of finishes, I'll stitch more monogamously again. So let me show those finishes to you. The first finish was my oldest whip, and that's ink circles after the roses. I started this a year ago in September 2024, and then didn't work on it much until I pulled it out again in June of this year. I was inspired by some folks on Instagram, including Joanne from Addicted to X-Stitch and Caroline from Caro's Crafts 19, to finish it. Here is where it was at my last update at the end of July. And here it is now. This was stitched 2 by 2 with all the called for Classic Colorworks cotton threads on a piece of 32 count sand by Picture This Plus. Overall, I'm happy with the finish. I do wish I picked a lighter fabric so that the flosses would stand out in a more vibrant way. I'm still not sure what I'll do with it. For a while I thought maybe a pillow, but this piece doesn't really match our decor. So maybe if I can find a frame where it wouldn't look too much like a holiday or Christmas project, I'll add it to our eventual sampler wall. For now, it's gonna be put away in my crafting closet with the rest of my projects that I haven't fully finished yet. And the chart is going to make its way to Georgia, to Linda, or LKC Makes on Instagram. Linda lived in Colorado for a while and we became Instagram friends. So Linda, I'll message you for your address and then drop it off at the post office so that you can stitch it too. My other finish is Manor at Quaker Hill by Brenda Gervais of With Thy Needle and Thread. I started this one, I think in February, with Angie from Angie Slowly Crafts. Angie wanted to start Blackbird Designs Strawberry Fields, and I wanted to start this project, both of which have red houses in them. And I was obsessed with this project. I could not put it down. When I wasn't stitching on it, I often thought about it and wanted to stitch on it. So here's where it was last month. And here it is now. I stitched using the called for fabric and all the called for flosses, except I switched out Classic Colorworks Lettuce Leaf for DMC 927. And this is what 927 looks like. Lettuce Leaf, for some reason, just seemed almost neon, and I was going for a more muted look. So I think this color, which shows up in the little pond and then in the two blue birds, I think is a good happy medium. It's still bright and creates a contrast from the rest of the sampler, but it doesn't feel neon to me. Now, I think I've said this before. For some reason, when I see other people working on this, like Sean Periwinkle, Stitcher, and I think Ellen Reed stitched on it a long time ago, their lettuce leaf does not look neon. So I don't know why when I was in my local needlework shop, it did look neon. Maybe it was the fluorescent lighting above, but it just wasn't for me. So I think this is a good alternate thread. There are also initials that go here, which I left off because I like the open space. And then I do want to show you, let's move this. This was my first time doing queen stitches on this, queen stitches on this strawberry here. This was my first time doing queen stitches on this strawberry here, and I think they turned out really cute. And this piece also has straight stitches in the grass and then in the bird's wings. My kids also call the house here our house because we do have a fir tree, juniper fir, in our front yard, and then not too far from the house we have a little pond where the geese kind of gather together. So they call this our house. I did already order a frame, like a off-white shabby chic kind of rustic frame from Michael's when they were having a 70% off sale. It should be here in about a week, and so hopefully the next time you see this piece, it'll be FFO'd and up on our sampler wall. And the last project I worked on was Martha Walmsley by Hands Across the Sea Samplers. This was still part of my focusing toward finishes mood in August. It's now my third oldest whip. I started it in December 2024, and I do love working on it. In our house, we jokingly call Martha my therapist. And this month I worked on her with Holly from Hobbies of Holly for a few days. April Heirloom and Beata Romana on Instagram are also both working on it, and I think a few other people have her as a whip too. This is where I was the last time you saw it. And here she is now. Pardon the creases. I do not iron until a piece is done. So as you can see, I have finished the entire border. And let me tell you, near the end, it started to feel like a slog. I had heard people complaining about the border, like on Flosstube and on Instagram, and 3/4 of the way around, I still didn't understand what they were talking about. The flowers have enough variation in them, and especially when you kind of stop working on them and work on one of the inner motifs, it was not bothering me. But these last 5 or so flowers, I was really getting ready to be done with this border. I can't remember what I said out loud, but my youngest started telling me, just do 1 flower, Mom. And then he would bring me a piece of chocolate each evening as I finished a flower. Typically it would take me 1 evening's worth of stitching to get a flower in. So my son was being really sweet, but also he was cracking me up. But the border is finally done. I'm loving how it looks. And this month, for Sampler September, I'm going to work on this, what looks like a baby's breath motif that goes up here in the top center. I guess part of it looks like baby's breath, and then part of it looks like, I'm not sure what, an artistic rendition of a Rose's profile or something. And I do want to finish her. I'm hankering for it again because I want to put her up. I just think she is one version of a perfect sampler. So those were all the projects that I worked on in August. I'm very pleased with how productive my stitching felt. I'm also very pleased with Elizabeth's release on Etsy. I'll talk very briefly about 2 of my Sampler September plans. So I'll start with the 2 finishes that I'd like to FFO, and then I'll share the other antique that I've just started reproducing. So here are the 2 finishes. I finished Blackbird Designs My Heart Can Rest last November. It was the first thing I picked up to stitch when we moved into this house, which is our forever home, our dream home, whatever you'd like to call it. And I think the sentiment, my heart can rest, really rang true for me. And I think it's just a lovely piece. There's a signature you can do at the bottom. I did not do that. I've already purchased a bronzy looking frame for it. And then this is Summer House Stitchworks Chronicles of Oline Marie. I think there are 2 volumes, and I can't remember which volume this is. I did switch out one of the colors in this lavender that you see was more of a teal. And this was my New Year's blessing stitch. So I'm hoping to FFO both of these, and then I will have 4 pieces. These 2, Elizabeth and Manor at Quaker Hill, that will be the first 4 pieces on our family's sampler wall, and I'll make a whole video about that when I think the wall is done. We had never lived in a house where having a sampler wall was an option. When we lived remote in Lake City, the house was a converted insulated barn, and so there was a lot of wood paneling, but then also a lot of glass, and very open concept. There was not a lot of wall space to hang things. And this house has a very big wall. I would say probably 20-25 feet wide by 10 feet tall. that we've decided is going to be our family's sampler wall. So I need to continue working on pieces for that. Okay, let's talk about the antique. So I had to adjust the lighting and close the window so that you could see this piece. I'm going to try to insert some photos as well, but it is still in a frame with glass. I am afraid to remove it because the linen is so fine. You can see there's a tear here in the backing. There's a tear here in the backing. This is Maria Fisher. She is a very special piece for several reasons. There's a Seneca quote, "Pitch upon that course of life which is most excellent, and habit will render it most delightful," that Benjamin Franklin, I suppose, reused in 1849. No, I'm sorry, 1749. Maria stitched this in 1796 when she was 11 years old. So I have started to chart her because of the holes in the backing here and here. I was able to take a peek and select the correct colors, and shout out to Jackie at a stitching shop who helped me select the fabric, which I'll show you in a second. While I was at a stitching shop, I ran into Elisa from eCrafting in Colorado here on Flosstube and on Instagram. Elisa, it was so good to see you. We unfortunately didn't get a chance to chat because I was talking to the shop owner, Christine, about like reproducing and her thoughts on it and her thoughts on what makes a reproduction a good one for stitchers to stitch on and use the pattern. But next time I'm in Denver for more than 24 hours, Elisa, I'm hoping we can get together. If you don't follow Elisa on Flosstube and Instagram, I highly recommend you do. She has an infectious laugh and some really beautiful projects, including lots of full coverage and kits. So let me show you the linen and 103s I've selected. This is 40 count mason linen sewing box. And you can see here I did some test stitches with each of the silks to make sure they matched. I think they match Maria pretty well. So here they are. I am missing one color. You can't tell from the front, but these flowers down here are in her signature line are like a lavender purpley color. So a stitching shop didn't have the color that I thought I needed, so I've ordered from 123 Stitches. Should be here in a couple of weeks. And as you can see, it's going to be a very faithful reproduction. The front is very, very faded. Some special things about this sampler. Oh, I'm sorry, you're getting a glare from the window. I don't know how to prevent that. Sorry about that. She did a rice stitch border all the way around here. She also has some rice stitches under this tree line. And then this alphabet, or half an alphabet from A through L, is done in Algerian eyelets. And importantly, for the late 1700s, two things. She had her letters M and N, but she also included the motifs for the minims, and I'm going to write that down, M-I-N-I-M, which is one of the ways that girls were taught to distinguish between the two letters. There is an I and a J in the top alphabet, but not in the lowercase alphabet, which is common for the time. In the late 1700s is when I and J stopped being used interchangeably and started separating into two distinct letters. And then here you can see there is a lowercase s and then this symbol between the R and the S that looks a little bit like an F but doesn't have the small cross part of the F. That was a letter that was used as a different sounding S, and she also has that letter instead of actual S in her last name. I am still working on narrowing her down. I have the original Stitcher. I have a couple of potential girls that were her. She is from the UK. My partner got her on an auction from somebody who sells lots of antiques from the UK, not often samplers. And my partner paid an exorbitant amount of money for her. I don't think she's worth what he paid, but I do love her. The last thing I'll say about her, and I'll ask for your help with, are these flower petals that are connected to the flower but look like they have feet. I'm very confused about what they are. They look like mid-century televisions. She clearly knew how to round out her flower petals and her leaf petals. Why are these so angular? But I have to imagine they are flower petals because they're connected here. So if you have an idea about what this could be, if not a flower petal, or why she would make her flower petals like that, other than the fact that she was 11 years old and a little girl, please let me know. Okay, I think that's all I have to show you. I'm hoping that some of you may want to join Kim's Stitch Along for Elizabeth Metcalf 1860. And again, my Etsy's link below if you'd like to purchase Elizabeth while she's on sale this month. I'll see you all at the end of Sampler September. I hope you have a wonderful fall in general, a wonderful Sampler September, and that your needlework brings you peace and joy, cozy feelings, and connection with others. Happy September stitching, everyone.